see this hawk just flying, and I spot this hawk, like smiling, wow, finally I meet my spirit. And he blew the thing, and there's a piece of meat just in front of me. And he blew the thing, and he's out of shot. And the thing came straight, and it came right in front of me, and it sat there. Took the piece of meat, and I took it, and I lifted the thing up slowly, and I kissed it, and I set it free. So there's a track on the album which really went big. It's called From Zimbabwe to Soweto, using this style, the bum jive. And I played the kalimba on that. And all of a sudden the track just went like sky high. Radio stations were playing it and all that, because it was completely different.
In a world where Africans have lost their roots, it has become of vital importance to document our ways. In an effort to reverse the brainwashing of the past, where we were made to believe our ways are demonic, we are pressed to create dignified and respectful platforms to unpack our spiritual ways. Umoya Ulight, Umoya Ubright, welcome to another beautiful episode of Umoya. Thank you to everybody who has been supporting us. As you can see, we've entered into a new arena, new phase, new season. It is the new year in the Southern Hemisphere. So this is our first episode of the year. How privileged we are to have one of our elders, cultural custodian, at this stage, it's our sages, I don't even know, Amadlozi Etu, who are still here with us. So we are just like sucking the last little bits before. That sounds so dark, right? I know.
Hi, Wena.
I don't have any tag to pop off. But we are literally just sucking, because this is when, obviously, in the human form,
Yeah.
this is when you are most valuable to us. So, yes, we are definitely using you, extracting your blessings. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for your contribution in the music industry and historically. And I know that we live in a country that doesn't acknowledge us, and that hasn't shown you the magnitude of your work. And I want you to rest assured that the people that you've made the music for, which is the future, they will find it and they will celebrate it in their time. It's just that we are born in a time of thunderhead. So
Thank you.
Dr. POPS Mohamed, welcome to Umoya.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So, Pops, let's take it from the beginning. I mean, we know you as a musician, you do indigenous music. So now we want you to take us to your childhood and where Pops started, and then, just take us on where did this Kora, the journey?
Sure. Yeah. It actually started when I was about 12 years old, where I was born in Benoni. And on the street where I lived, there used to be a record store. Kismet, I think was the name, and they used to sell those vinyl, the vinyl records in those days that they used on gramophones. And I sort of liked it, always listening to the music. And then sometimes over weekends, there'll be a band that used to come and play in the courtyard where we lived, playing what they called lang arm, bossa nova and all that dance music, which was nice, But in the same time, we had what we call the Davy Social Center. It's still there. And that's where we saw people with the likes like, that was before Brahil went abroad. The Elite Swingsters and all the bands from Johannesburg used to come and play there. Ballroom, not really ballroom, but they used to play American jazz, but also mbaqanga and stuff like that, So I had these two worlds, listening to Kismet and listening to these guys playing at the Davy Social Center. And then on Sunday night, there was a radio station. I think they still have it. It's called LM Radio. I think it's online. And this was, they broadcasted from a ship, which Lorenzo Marx, that's what it was, which is now Maputo.
Okay.
And they used to broadcast from the ship. And the LM radio played top 40 stuff, you know, so I had these three worlds. So listening to LM radio every Sunday night, I'm exposed to a different world, to Western music. I mean, the artists whose names I'll give you, I don't think you'll even know them, like Pat Boone, Helen Shapiro, Nicky Nelson, some like Elvis Presley, you know, and those guys. So I had all these influences, and suddenly I felt there's something biting me, you know. So at school, almost every classroom had a piano. And one day I went to the piano and I just played 2 notes on the piano, like bum. And I said, wow, this is nice, this makes sense. I continued and I continued. And I found out, you know, that I can actually play if I want to. So I used to steal during school breaks just to sit on the piano, playing the piano, you know, getting there slowly. And, and then I fell in love with the guitar because I was exposed to Cliff Richard and the Shadows and the Beatles and those guys, like, wow, this is pretty cool. And then my late brother bought me a guitar when I was 14 years old at a place called Kalamazoo. And then my dad sent me to Dorkey House in Elof Street, where I went to study guitar.
What was Dorkey House for our generation?
It's still there. I don't know what they use it for, but that Dorkey House is where all the musicians hung out. That was the only establishment in the whole country where you had so many musicians in one establishment. All the plays, I mean, the Black Mambazo they were still around. They were there around already. And then there were plays like the Black Mikado, King Kong, and all those plays, that's where they were rehearsing. And then we took lessons. There were classrooms as well, where we took guitar lessons. I remember I had a German teacher, and he taught me the music of the Shadows, you know. But at Dorkey House, we but we saw people like Abdullah Ibrahim, you know, playing his piano, you know, in a room, and he had these big boots on, you know, and a pint of milk, bread, brown bread, and, you know, and just going on. So there was all this activity of all these artists, you know. I loved it. You know, it was a vibe. It was really a vibe. And then when I entered high school, by then I could vamp a few things on the piano. So we had music lessons every Thursday. And it turns out that our music teacher, Mr. Kun, I'll never forget his name, he was an amazing jazz pianist. You know, he taught us the notes and everything and so on. But I already knew the notes, you know, when we have to do our homework. And
How come you already knew the notes?
Because I learned how to read at Dorkey House, the staff notation, you know. So what he taught is stuff that I've already learned a long time ago, you know. So everyone knew that I know what's going on. If you ask people, you know, what's this note, and people would be shivering, and guys would be coming like, pops, what? You know, so I'll tell them that's an A, that's an F, that's a D sharp, you know, and so on. And then I'll never forget, he gave an example of some musical notes that stuck together, And then he said, I'll give you an example, and he played the Beatles. It can be love, and he played this amazing chords, you know. Can buy me love. I said, wow, that's amazing. And I said, sir, can I play something on the piano? He says, can you play? I said, a little bit. So I got onto the piano and I started playing, you know, what I know. And he says, hey, it's all right, nah?
Sorry, Pops, can you ask them, please?
Yeah, so he played Can't Buy Me Love, Can Buy Me Love, but jazzy chords, you know. And I said, can I play something? He says, can you play? I said, a little bit. So I went onto the piano and I started playing some stuff, you know. And he looks at me and says, hey, it's all right, nah? He says, who taught you to play? I said to him, no, I'm still a student at Docker House. He says, student at Docker House, why don't I see you? Because I hang out there all the time, you know. So he was really, really proud of me, you know, that I was advanced, like, you know. So he says, I don't need to.
Was this a white person?
No, he was a colored guy.
Oh, okay. Because
Yeah.
I'm busy wondering about the politics. When you say Doke House, I'm assuming that it was for African people, because in those times.
It was for African people.
Okay.
It was for African people. And now that you're mentioning it, my accountant, his mom, Dock House belonged to his mom,
Oh, wow.
which I didn't know, you know. So I only learned that about 2 years ago when he said my mom owned Dock House and she rented it out for just for the love of music, and so that black people could, they Jews, so that black people could at least have access to something, you know. So Mr. Koon never bothered with me in the classroom, you know. He was just working on the kids throughout the whole year. So that was that. And when I finally finished school, I joined my very first band. I started a band which was called Les Valiants, you know. And I was the lead guitar. I was the lead guitarist. By then, we were playing like top 40 stuff. And you're not a band if you didn't play the top 40. You know, you had to play the top 40. And in those days, we didn't play in clubs, you know. I didn't know of clubs. We used to play in the school classrooms, and they used to call it sessions.
Oh.
Yeah, you just organized with the principal and said, okay, Saturday afternoon. And then we play in the school classrooms, you know, just amplifier for the guitar and for the bass and the rhythm guitar and a set of drums.
This was the just across the music industry. That's how it operated back then.
That's how we started off.
Yes.
But the other guys, the bigger guys, they had access to much more bigger PA systems and things, because we started out small, you know. So, I mean, you make like 2 or 3 pounds, because we worked in pounds in those days. And that was good enough for us, you know, to feed the family or do whatever you want. And so we played all the top 40 stuff and people loved it. By then I started looking for it.
So, I'm sorry, I keep disturbing you because I want to get the picture. So, when you say like you played in the schoolyard, in the school classroom, within the grown-ups in the area or the young people?
All the young people.
So it's a young culture thing
young
that's
culture
happening.
thing,
So
yeah.
the young people would come out to the school like at 3 o'clock.
School, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Our
got it,
school
got it,
friends,
got it,
yeah. And I mean, it was like 10 shilling, 10 pence, you know, 10 cents to enter, which was a lot of money in those days, you know. So I think other bands also caught on, and they also started using classrooms, you know, to do their sessions. So there was this competition of all the bands, but which was good for me also. It was a very good exercise to play for an audience, because I remember my very first show that I actually played. I mean, you tremble. You don't want to look at the crowd. You get, you know, stage fright, you know. So that happened, and then I had to find a job, because I was growing up, and I got my first job And I was a mullah.
A what?
A mullah, someone who makes mealie meal
Oh, okay,
and
okay,
flour
okay.
and rice. So I did my
Gotcha.
apprenticeship on that, you know. So for 5 years I've been working as a mullah. And then my girlfriend at the time, I went like, oops, when she told me that she's pregnant. And it was, hey, what's going to happen now? So I had to tell my parents. So her parents and my parents got together and they said, look, hulle moet regmaak. They have to fix. In other words, they have to get married. So that was it. In those days, you couldn't argue. So I got married at a very young age. You know, I think I must have been like 21, 22 when I got married. But I enjoyed my life, you know. So over weekends, we would play and started getting contacts to play in Johannesburg. And in some clubs, we started knowing about clubs and things like that. And then I joined my first professional band, which was called Society's Children. That was in 1971. And this band was based in Johannesburg. And this was like a proper band, you know. And we got like proper gigs in Fordsburg. There were lots of clubs like the Matador, Shares Gay, you know, lots and lots of clubs. And the scene was very heavy, you know. It was live bands in those days. So we played there for almost a year at the Club Matador. And then we got like a residency in Pretoria at, what was the name of the club? Club Bel Air. So we used to drive from Western, because the group was based in Western Colour Township. We used to travel from there all the way to Pretoria every Saturday night and played there. So the band became quite popular, you know. We made a good name for ourselves. So we carried on for about 2.5 years. And after that, we disbanded. And then I joined another band in Benoni, which was called El Gringos. And we had a residency as well at a club called Club Sharino. So I've been gigging there every week with the band, gigging with them. And even my playing became stronger and stronger, you know, because I was practicing a lot on the guitar. It became stronger and stronger. And over the years, I met a guy called Rashid Valley from Asham Records. There was a record store called Koyeno in town, in Market Street and in Court Street. They had 2 branches. So he recorded Abdullah Ibrahim, Kipi Moketsi, Duke Makaze, and a lot of jazz musicians. So I went to see him and I said to him, I'd love to record for your label. And he said, have you got a demo? So I brought the demo of my music. And he said, no, it's fine. You could come and we'll go into the studio. We'll do an album. And I had an organ that had its own rhythm box. I didn't need a drummer. So you just press the tempo, and then you play. So got to the studio, and there was Sipho Gumede. He got Sipho Gumede to play bass, and Basil Kutsia, he's late as well, and he was on saxophone. So we recorded this album, which is called Black Disco. There was a guy by the name of Timmy Thomas. He had a big hit in those days. It was called Why Can't We Live Together? And that album was banned here in South Africa. So every record that gets banned by the censorship becomes like a gold record, if you want to say.
Yes.
Because all the stores used to get it from the record company from Gallows, and they would give it to the gogo sitting on the corner, and she would keep it under her. So they come into the store and they say, I want Timmy Thomas. And then they just give a number and they pay it. They say, just go to the go-go there. So they would go with a number and then she would give them the album. So every time an album is banned, the people are curious to know what is it, and they buy the album. That's what happened. You know, so my album, Black Disco, was based on the style of Timmy Thomas, because he was big at the time. And the album went big as well. And it's funny we're talking of Black Disco, because as we speak now, the album has been licensed to a company in Italy, and they are pressing up vinyl, but the album won't come to South Africa. It will come as an import, but it will be distributed in England, in Italy and other European countries. So Black Disco is it's currently out now, and it's on vinyl. So that's good, you know. So, and then as the years went by, we got to June 1976 with the uprisings. Students were marching and all that stuff that was happening. And I listened to people like Blondie and Papa, Zwak Mbulu, Hugh Masekela, Bring Back Nelson Mandela. And I was listening to all those tunes, you know. And I thought to myself, if I want to continue playing music, because I could feel there's a new South Africa, something is boiling here. There's a future coming on. I had the opportunity to go and live in exile, because a lot of musicians went to live in exile. And so I thought to myself, if I want to continue playing music, the world doesn't need another guitar player. The world doesn't need an organ player. There are too many of them. The world doesn't need another piano player. There are too many piano players. Why don't I look back to our roots, our heritage? Because on the radio stations, the black radio, they used to call it Radio Bantu back in those days. They played pure, undiluted music, traditional music, pure, hardcore, no guitars and nothing, you know. But that faded away. They stopped playing that, and it gave way for American music to come in. And I thought, why isn't this music playing anymore, you know? So I decided I want to play an indigenous instrument. So I called a friend of mine, the ethnomusicologist, Andrew Tracy. He died recently. They in Grahamstown. And his father's got the biggest collection at the university. They have the biggest collection of African instruments. Any kind of instrument that you can think of. His father, Hugh Tracy, went around Africa recording African musicians and collecting instruments. So I called Andrew Tracy up and I said to him, you know what, I would love to play the imbira. He said, are you sure? I said, yes. So he gave me, he sent me a kalimba, which his wife brought to me. By then, I was working for Rashid Vali for Asham Records, because, I mean, he had such a great connection with people from abroad. I asked him for a job there, and I quit the job at the factory where I was working. So I asked him for a job, and he said you could do in-store promotions. So I was working there, and she came to the store, and she gave me the imbira. And it also came with a little booklet that teaches you how to play the imbira. And I started messing around with the imbira. And that's when I heard Johnny Clegg with the Savuka. Was it Savuka? No. What was the name of the group? Johnny Clegg, him and Sipo, the very first one.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was the two of them. And they came out and they were doing Zulu music. And he was promoting that. And I really, really loved what he was doing. I said, wow, look at this guy fusing the music. And this is what I would like to do. So from the Imbira, I started looking into the music of the San people. Because every time when I went onto Discovery Channel, they'll show the San with the bow and arrows all the time. And I said, there's got to be a musical side of the San people, you know? And I went to SABC. In fact, I went to a few shops asking them, do they have music for the San people? And no one said, no, we've never heard of that. We don't think you'll ever get it. So I went to SABC and the archive section, and I spoke to the guy and I asked him, do you have anything on the San? And he says, not that I know of. We may have one, but that's about all that we have. And in those days, we had those analog machines, you know, the reel-to-reels. And so they had to transfer it from reel-to-reel to a cassette for me. And I remember paying 30 rands for it. So I got home and I played it. And the music was like from a different planet. You know, I listened and I said, wow, this is something else, man. I've never heard anything like this. One day I'd love to go to the Kalahari and learn to play that mouth bow, you know. So I've been working there, and I asked Rashid, can we do another album? You know, apart from Black Disco, I'd love to do another album. We did an album and we called it Kalamazoo. No, so Firetown Society. And on this album, it was amazing because I took what they called not soul music. There was a trend which was called Soweto soul music, but this trend was called bump jive, when people are doing bump jive. And I said to myself that I want to do a bump jive track and use one of my indigenous instruments, you know. So there's a track on the album which really went big. It's called From Zimbabwe to Soweto, using this style, the bum jive. And I played the kalimba on that. And all of a sudden the track just went like sky high. Radio stations were playing it and all that because it was completely different. And it caught the attention of the media. You know, people started calling me, they wanted interviews. What made you use this indigenous instrument? Do you think people will like what you're doing, this kind of fusion? And I said, I don't know. I mean, you know, people are buying the album, so... And I got all the attention, and all of a sudden I started getting bookings, you know? And then a guy walked in there. I was already 2 years working at the store. This man walks into the shop and he says to me, I'm looking for POPS Mohamed. I said, I'm POPS Mohamed. He says, I have your cassette. I'll tell you about the cassette in a bit. And I love this cassette. But I want you to come tonight. That was the first Arts Alive in Johannesburg. And he said, there's a band that I brought from Brazil, Ayrton Moreira, and his wife, Flora Purem. I'd love you to come and listen to them. I said, sure. So he gave me a complimentary ticket. And we went. I went to see the show. It was fantastic. And I asked him, would you like to see one of our musicians that's a young musician I want you to listen to? And he said, yes. I took him to Kippies. There was Moses Mululeko playing the piano. It just blew his mind. And he asked me, who the hell is that guy? I said, it's Moses, one of our up-and-coming piano players. You know, he fell in love with the playing of Moses. And he said to me, I'll be in touch. So he came Monday to the shop before they flew back. and he said to me, how would you like to join my label in England? I said, how? What do you mean? And he says, no, I've got a label, and I want to recruit South African musicians, world music musicians, and start this label. I said, for sure, you know. So he left, and then I asked Rashid Valley, how do you see my future in the store in the next 5 years? You know? And he said, well, you know, we carry on doing recordings and doing what we're doing. And I said to him, you know, I tried to avoid this man from England. I said, how about you making a space in the other shop? Because you have a basement. We build a recording studio and we start recording there. And it didn't seem like a good idea to him, you know. So I had no option. I had to leave for England, you know. So I immediately said to him that, look, this is my last month, you know, I'm quitting the job. I'm going abroad. So I left, Robert bought me the ticket, and I went to London, and I met him there. And then we started, it's so funny, recruiting people, Sipho Mukumede, Pusi Mhlongo, Matala Kunene, Makoy Mkhobata, Zemngwala. You just name them. Amampondo, Lulu, Dizu's sister, and all these people. I started contacting them and so on. And yeah, and they all agreed. They said, oh, we'd really love to be part of a label abroad. So that's said and done. So I'm coming back to this cassette that I'm telling you about. When I have left, when I left Koh-i-Noor, this is a strange story, I bought myself a small Porter studio. It's a small recording machine that records only 4 tracks, and it works with a cassette, right? So, and I recorded an album called Society Vibes, featuring Makoy Mkhubata, because I said, I want to start my own record label. So McCoy came, and after I had programmed all the tracks, I didn't have a reverb unit, you know, a reverb unit. So I stuck him in the bathroom, because the bathroom has got reverb. If you do this, you can actually hear the reverb. So I recorded him there. And it was so strange. I did another recording with Gina Mhlope, and I put her into the wardrobe to record, you know, because the acoustics was really nice. Because I lived right on Louis Botha, and you know how noisy it could be. But in the same time, Don Laka did the same thing. He also had a 4-track recording studio, and he recorded Boom Shaka on that. So we were communicating, and he said to me that, he says to me, the money that I've got, I bought myself this machine, and my wife doesn't know about it. If she finds out, she's going to kill me. But I'm betting my life on this recording that I'm doing. And I also said, I'm betting my life on the album that I'm doing. So I got a professional recording engineer to mix it for me. And the guy said, man, it's only 4 tracks, you could do it. And I said, no, I want the touch of a professional engineer. So he mixed it for me, really, really nice. And then, crazy times, man, if you're so desperate, I made duplicates on cassette of what Peter had mixed for me. I made a lot of duplicates. I had a stencil. I took pictures of McCoy's children, and that was the cover. I had to print them out, went to a printer, printed them out, and packaged the cassette.
How old are you when you were doing this? Do you remember?
Oh, man. I was around about 38, 39.
Okay, cool. Uh-huh.
And I had all these cassettes in this checkers bag. Don Laka also had Boom Shaka. So I went to Reliable Radio. They became quite big.
Yeah.
And they had a shop in Jappiestown back then. Someone told me to go to them. I went to them and I said to the guy, look, I've got this. And he said, look, I'll give you so much per cassette. I said, okay, fine. So he said to me that you don't have to go to the other shops in Fordsburg because everyone buys from me. I'm the main distributor. It's almost like a mafia kind of thing, So, yeah, sure. He took a whole lot from me and started distributing. But the funny thing about it was that I saw a lot of the big record labels were there as well. Gallows, EMI, Till Records, all of them,
The majors.
the reps. They were there all depending on him because he went into townships. He went to places where these record labels couldn't go to, like really rough places, They went in there. So they brought all their product to him. So in the same time, Don Laka was also doing the same thing, moving with Boom Shaka. So Don Laka came to the shop and he said to me, Pops, I've got this track. Would you like to play it, I said, for sure, Brother Don. So I played Boom Shaka. Now you must remember Rashid's shop where I was working, they only played jazz, American jazz, So Rashid says, what are you playing? Take that thing off, I said, no, this is Don. I mean, and I said, just let the track finish playing. So after the track finished, people came into the store. What was playing there? And I said, this one, can I have one? And then Rashid said to Don, how many have you got in your packet in that bag of his? He says, so much. He says, give it all. Because they see money, you know what I mean?
I know.
And that's how Boom Shaka just went, right to the top. So that's the story of the cassette.
Oh my God.
So while I was in England, the manager of the label, Robert is his name, and he said to me, look, we've recorded so many people already so far. When are you going to record your album? And I said to him, when I record my album, I want to go to the Kalahari desert and meet the sand people. I want to record the sand people. I want to record their instruments that they are using. I want to learn about their culture, the food, the plants, and all those things. That will be my solo album, my first album for you, And he seemed to love the idea. His eyes just went like this, It's like, this is like very exotic for them, And all of a sudden he organized, got a whole crew together and saying we're going to Namibia, to the desert. And I had already known someone in Namibia, the Broadcasting Corporation, who was in touch with the Sand people. So we organized and we went to Namibia. I flew from Joburg to Windhoek, and I met them at the airport there. We got this guy and we drove down to the desert. And that's where we met the Sand people. And so we had to meet the chief, because you have to get permission from the chief to do recordings. And we spoke to him, and Robert spoke to the chief and said, look, this is our plan. Pops wants to do this and that, so on. We will give them a contract, and also the session fees that they'll be paying them would be international session rates, and he agreed. So that evening, after he had spoken to the Sand people, that evening the people were so happy. If you visit the Sand people, they're so happy to get visitors. So that evening they started doing a trance dance, dancing around the fire. It was like, for me, it was wow. And so I compared, I forgot to tell you, the cassette that was given to me by SABC, they transferred it onto cassette, and when I got home, it was all in Afrikaans. Luckily, I speak Afrikaans. And they told me that a guy from Britain, BBC, came in 1952. He recorded the Sand and took it to the archives in Britain, their archives, and sold it back to SABC. How do you like that? So that's the only reference that they had. So I wanted to know what the music is going to sound like if I compare to what I have on the cassette and what they were doing then from 1952, if it had ever changed. And I discovered that the music was exactly the same. Wow. It was unbelievable that it was exactly the same. Nothing had changed. I said, wow, this is incredible. So they haven't been influenced, And immediately, man, I set up, Peter Thwaites, the sound engineer guy, set up 2 microphones, stereo, and they started recording the trance dance. And it was absolutely amazing. People going into a trance, falling next to the fire, and they would pull people away, and all those things that's happening, like this was like the proper thing, and it was quite late that night. And they don't have a sense of time, and it was like something else, something I've never seen in my life before. So we recorded that, and the next morning we started meeting the elders and the other young ones. We started meeting like the Tswana Sand, because some of them are intermarried. So I got to know about the Herreros and all those people, we started meeting them. And then we started with the real recordings. And I became quite close to this old man, because his face is on the cover of the album. And I got close to him, and he introduced the mouthbow to me, the Sand mouthbow. And he told me about the mouthbow, how special it is to them. And I asked him, what is the name of this instrument that you're playing? Because I see when you play it, it seems to me you go into a trance. His eyes don't even blink. And he says, no, it's called ikuma. I said, ikuma? He said, yes. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. This can be like something mystical, something that's valuable. If I do workshops back home in South Africa, I could tell them about ikuma. So I asked him, what does ikuma mean? And he said, no, die ding is net, as jy speel, hy maak gum, 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 gum. And I said, oh my God, that spoiled it for me now. What am I going to say? Because I had something else in my mind, and he says the thing only makes gum, 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 I said, no, man, Kubi, you sure?
There's no deeper meaning.
And he says, yeah, when we play this thing, people tell stories and we play it, you know. When a woman gives birth to a child, they play the mouth bow, and the pain is easy. You know, so the child is born in music, you know. And also that, then I realized, but this is special, this is very special. And especially for ceremonies, they have different kinds of ceremonies at funerals. And all those places, they use the mouth bow. And then this deep meaning actually came to me. You know, I started realizing that this thing is a very special instrument. You know, so I carried that with me. And then on the third day, I decided that I'm going to record ambience. We had those DAT cassettes, those small little cassettes, 90 minutes. So I put it in my DAT machine, had 2 microphones, and I just recorded. I went to sleep, and I set my alarm on my phone, and I just recorded nothingness, just the ambience of the desert.
All right, guys, you've reached the end of part 1. To watch part 2, you have to be part of the MOYA community, which is paying less than 20 Rand a month. So not only do you subscribe, can you just press the join button there, put in your banking details, so that every month, you're paying your tithe. So those of us who are within, let's go to part 2. There we go.
When Nelson Mandela came into power, when the ANC came into power, South Africa was the most focal point in the world. Everything was South Africa. Bands were performing all over the world. People were traveling all over the world. When I'm on Heathrow going to do a gig, I'll see Tandiswa them coming back, Bongo Muffin coming back from some gig. Hi, how's it? And there's Pongile Kumalo also. So everyone had work. I mean, for 4 to 5 months. People were traveling like you won't believe. And I look at the depression. Young people, all of them are using substance abuse. And young girls, 14, 15, getting pregnant, and you know, everyone you see. And it's like, what is causing this?